Hey guys, Heavens on Fire XCS V2 here, and welcome to episode 2 of Movies in a Nutshell. This episode is sponsored by TJ Watson. Today's movie we'll be doing is Crank 2 High Voltage. Now, when I first saw this movie, I was like,
oh my god, this movie sucks more than a porn star.
But after viewing it a second time just to refresh my memory for this episode, I was like, holy crap, that was like watching a movie on black tar and PCP. Whoa! So yeah, it's a pretty crazy movie. And even if you didn't see it, you'll know why by my description of Crank 2 High Voltage. So here we go. Okay, so the Crank series is revolved around a guy named Chev Chelios, and this guy's a mother-f***ing beast. He doesn't die. I mean, he dodges death like crazy. Like, he's better at not dying than Magic Johnson not dying from AIDS. I mean, it's incredible. For those of you who do not know about the first Crank film, the whole concept of that movie was Chev Chelios was injected with some Chinese poison shit that made it so he had to stay, adrenaline pumping in his body, or else he would die in an hour. So already, that sounds really stupid. Okay, but the movie ends with Chev Chelios falling out of the helicopter with the bad guy, and, they're punching each other, and Chev Chelios falls in a car, goes flying, and he's dead, but then he blinks, so he's alive. So you're like, oh, sequel. And that's where Crank High Voltage 2 begins. So Crank 2 High Voltage starts out showing Chev Chelios on the floor with his eyes open, then he does a blink, and you're like, alright, we effing saw this already. But then, in an instant, there's a bunch of guys wearing suits come out, and they're like, oh, we gotta clean this guy up now. Take his body, put it in a car, and they're gone. So already you're like, oh. So then, we see Chelios getting operated by some Asians, and he's awake. So he wakes up, and he's like, yo, man, you didn't give me enough anesthetic. Suck my wang, Bill. And they're like, no, we're not gonna suck your wang, we're gonna take your heart. And he's like, what? And they go, flaw. And he's like, my effing heart, nah. So then they put in this gooey heart, and they just stick it in there, and he's like, whatever, man, I'm going the F back to sleep. So he just goes back to sleep. No biggie. Wakes up, sees two Asian people there, and they're looking at the sheet, they're like, okay, so we're going to freaking take his heart, and this is even his penis. So Chev Chelios hears that they're gonna take his meat stick, and he's like, no one's getting my Tom Johnson. And he gets up and he starts beating the shit out of those Asian guys like no tomorrow. Like, he's just pummeling him. He takes like a syringe or something and just stabs it through the guy's neck, and he's like, oh, and he's dead. So Chev Chelios, rips up all this stuff, and he's like, oh, what the F is this thing? There's some belt connected to like his heart, and he's like, oh, it's gotta be some electricity thing for my heart, nah. So he's walking, finds some clothes, kills some more peeps. Walks outside, kills some more peeps, finds one guy, and he's like, alright, I need to know what happened to my heart now. So he goes, tell me, or I'll take the shotgun, stick it in tar, and shove it up your beehole. He ends up doing it anyways. So he sticks up, and the guy's like, yo, man, he's in a social club, I swear to God. He's like, alright, you can keep the shotgun up your beehole, because I hate you so much, stupid wang. And he's like, oh. So he sees a car there, and he's like, alright, hot wiring this dump. It's so hot wired. And then he's like, oh, what the hell? He's feeling all drained. You know why? It's because that stupid sticky artificial heart is draining his friggin' juices out of his body. And he's like, oh, I need some stuff now. Maybe if I take these hot wires and then he's like, wah! And he's like going at lightning speed through a car, and he's like, oh, let's just call my doctor. Yo, doc. And the doc's like, oh, Chev, you're alive? He's like, yeah, man. Well, I just got an artificial heart. What do I do? He's like, you need to stay electrocuted or you'll die in 45 minutes. He's like, all right, thanks for telling me, fat ass. So he's going, and he sees some cabrons, like gang members to the side, and he's like, hey, can you get me to the social club? And the cabrons are like, yo, I say there ain't no social club around here, man. Actually, it's right over there. And he's like, alright, thanks. Freaking crashes into a freaking curb, and he's like flying out. He's like, oh, that was effing retarded. Who put this curb there, nah? He doesn't say that, but that's what probably he was thinking. So he's like, oh, Christ, my car's all wrecked, my wang's all bloody, my pasta salad's all over the floor, it's just a mess. And so the cabrons come back, they're like, yo, what's sorry, I say? You need a jump? He's like, yeah, my car doesn't need a jump, but I do. And they're like, oh, this guy's crazy, nah? So they take out the jumps, and Chevy's like, juice man. So they're like, alright. And he puts it one on his tongue, one on his nipple, and he ends up going like, ah, ah! So he just starts booking it like crazy, just booking it, just like booking it like Usain Bolt on crack or something like that. So he ends up getting to the social club, and he's like, what the F? So all of a sudden some fat guy comes out, some skinny Asian whore, and he's like, oh, what the hell? So, are you Johnny Vang? And he's like, who's Johnny Vang? He's like, the guy who stole my effing heart. He's like, I don't know, man. Check inside. So he just takes him, slaps him, go inside, kills everyone in the social club, and he's like, oh, he's effing not here. So then, like, he sees the fat guy, he shoots her, the Asian chick's like, oh, please let me suck on your wonton, nah. And he's like, no, please, just get the hell away from me. And she's like, no, let me just butter your egg roll, nah. And she's like, no, I don't want that crap. He goes, I know where Johnny Vang is. He's like, all right, please then, tell me. So apparently he's at a strip club. So he goes into the strip club with the stupid little Asian whore. And then he goes in and he looks at the stripper. He's like, oh, that's nice. Wait a minute, that's my effing girlfriend. Turns out it's his effing girlfriend. And she's like, Chev, oh my. And he goes like, stop stripping and make out with me. So they start making out. It's all like... So, all of a sudden, friggin', like, these other cabrons, not the same cabrons from before, but these, like, gangster cabrons, they're like, Chelios, you gonna die, man. And he's like, oh, get the hell out of here, girlfriend. He's, like, lighting them up, just killing them all, and he's like, that's how I do shit work, nah. Alright, now I gotta find out where that scumbag Johnny Vang is. So he sees some guy, he's dying, he's like, yo, where the F is he? And he's like, I don't know. So he's like, alright, screw. Yourself. So he walks outside and then he's like, oh shit, there's cops everywhere, and he's like, well, I might as well be effed. Puts his hands up. Of course, this cop goes, I'm gonna tase you. Zzz, and he's like, I'm gonna get juiced. And he starts just killing everybody. And he's like, let's get in the effing cop car. So he's just going in the cop car. He's like, yeah. His girlfriend's like, what the F are you doing? He's like, I'm just being juiced. Has the taser, he's tasing his tongue. He's like, and she's like, oh, I'm actually girlfriend of this faggot. And he's like, yes, you are. Anyways, I'll explain to you later. So he calls up the doctor and he's like, yo, doc, you know anything about Johnny Vang? He's like, Johnny Vang? Yes. He goes to the racetrack. He goes, all right, I'll go there right now, nah. And then so, like, you know, and the cops are there and they're like, oh, that guy just killed a bunch of cops. Let's get him. So he's like, oh, crap. All of a sudden they see this friggin' Mexican guy come up on a motorcycle. He's like, Chelos, get on now. And he's like, okay, I don't even know who the F you are. Get on. And then he looks at him. He's like, wait a minute. You're my best friend from the first movie. And he's like, no, I'm not the best friend from your first movie. I'm the twin of your best friend from the first movie. I'm gay and I have full body Tourette's. He's like, full body Tourette's? What the F? So he just starts going like, and he ends up crashing the motorcycle. He's like, yo, dude, what the F? And so, like, he's like, sorry, man, I can't help it. Sorry, man, I can't help it. So it's like, oh, Jim. He's like, yeah, man, I need you. I need to avenge my brother. And he's like, it's all right, man. I already raped all those guys in the first movie. He's like, no, now my life is pointless. And he goes like, no, actually I didn't kill one guy. His name's the Ferret. He goes, all right, I'll go find this guy now. And he goes, all right, dick sucker, leave me alone. So they go away. He's going to the racetrack. And you know, he's in the racetrack. And so, you know, he's feeling low. He's like, oh, crap, that taser ran out. I got nothing. Yo, doc, what should I do? He's like, rub against people. Creates friction. He goes, all right, man, whatever it takes. So he goes to random people and starts rubbing them. He's like, yo, man, just getting the rub on, nah? And he like starts humping an old lady. He's like, oh yeah, friction, nah! And like his girlfriend walks out of nowhere. She's like, oh, why are you humping that old lady? He's like, I need friction, nah. And she goes, I'll give you friction. Next thing you know, they're friggin', you know, getting it on in the middle of the racetrack. And like, you know, he's sticking his dingling in her Lady Mary. And it's like, well, I said I can life you in a racetrack. And it's like all friggin' weird. So he's like all pumped up. He finishes up, if you know what I mean. And, you know, he's all revved up. And he sees Johnny Vang. He's like, oh, Johnny Vang, I'm gonna go kill you. So he's running out. And he chases Johnny Vang, gets on his car. And he's like, I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, no, you're not. And then all of a sudden, you're free security. And he's like, oh, crap, not again. And then all of a sudden, Johnny Vang books it away. He's like, ah. And he's like, oh, you faggot. Give me my heart back, nah. So all of a sudden, he's by the security. He's like, shit. And then all of a sudden, this limo comes. This fat Asian guy's like, get in the car. He's like, what is with people? Me getting on the rides. First, I got a gay Mexi. Now I got a fat Asian. What's next? A friggin' anorexic black guy? So anyways, they're in the limo, and the fat Asian guy is a guy from the first movie who, like, was enemies with Chev Chelios. He's like, oh, I hated you, nah, but now you saved me. I thank you. And he's like, no, you're gonna hate me again. I'm gonna turn you in. He's like, oh, please, nah. And he's like, yes, the reason thing is, there's this guy named Poon Dong, and your heart is in his body. He's like, why would my heart be in a guy named Poon Dong? And he's like, well, Poon Dog's 100 years old, and he's got your heart in there. And he's like, first of all, why is his name Poon? He's like, I don't know, because penis sounds bad. So he's like, so what do you plan to do? And he's like, I'm going to turn you into Poon Dog. He's like, no, you're not. Brrr! Just start shooting them all. They're all dead. He's like, ha, faggots. He's out, he's like, oh crap, heart's bad. Hey, look, a high voltage box. And he's like, oh. And some guy's like, what the F? And he's like, never felt better, Jim. Never felt better. So he calls the doctor and he's like, yo, doc, my heart's in some other fag. His name's Poondog. And he goes, all right, well, I'm going to send out a really fat black whore to go, seduce him, but actually cut out his heart. It's like, all right, that's a great idea. I should have thought of that one myself, fat ass. Hangs up the phone. So he's just walking on the streets, and randomly, who is there? Johnny Vang with his heart in a container, and he's like, oh, Jay Vang! So he starts booking it towards him, and he's like, oh, so they're booking it, and they're like friggin' beating the shit out of each other, but like, it's weird, because when you see it on the screen, it looks like they have giant heads. Like, he's got giant head, like the size of Pamela Anderson's knockers, and like, they're fighting. It looks like Godzilla, so already we're like, oh my god! So ends up, Chev Chelios is like, oh crap, I'm getting dying. And he's like, I'm going to push him to this electric box. He's like, bad idea for you. He starts punching him. And he's holding him up. He's like, all right, give me the combination of my heart box. So he's like turning it. He's like, all right, yes, my heart. Oh, what the is this? Actually, we don't know what's inside the box. But Chev Chelios says something like, some kind of sick freak only carries this shit around. And so, we don't know what it could be. Like, it could be Justin Bieber's balls, or it could be Tiger Woods' golf game, or it could be Lady Gaga's penis, or it could be Kim Kardashian's sex tape, or it could be Amy Winehouse's penis. Anyways, we don't know what it is, but it could be one of those things. So he's like, all right, I'm just going to kill you. All of a sudden, his head blows up, and he's like, the F? I do not do this with my hand, nah. Because if he did, he'd be perfect for a Reebok ZigTech commercial. Just imagine. Chev Chelios, and ZigTech is an energy drink for your motherfucking feet. Anyways, he turns around. It's the cabrons from the friggin' strip club, and he's like, hey, I say, how about I shoot you in the fucking dick? And he's like, oh, please, nah. So they punch him out. He's all knocked out. So we see the cabrons bringing the Chev Chelios to the ferret, and he's like, oh, you ferret scumbag. And he's like, yes, I am the ferret. He's like, why don't you choose a better name? And he goes, because penis sounds bad. And he's like, why do you want me? And he's all like, I found you, I'm gonna kill you. But first of all, here's this guy's head from the first movie. And he's like, what? Turns around, it's the freaking the evil guy's head that fell out of the helicopter with Chev Chelios in like a water tank connected to stuff. He's like, Chelios, I hate you, you motherfucker. And he's like, wow, gay head, suck my dick, head. And, Chelios, all of a sudden his shirt's rolled on. He's like, what the F are you doing? He's like, I'm going to whip you to death. What? So he's just whipping him. He's like, ow, oh, it's effing hurts, nah. So, like, then all of a sudden the gay guys come out of nowhere, along with the black gay guys, and, like, the Mexican gay guys are like, hey, we faggots gonna take you down, man. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, yes, we are. They start shooting out of nowhere. And remember that Asian whore from before? She comes out of nowhere. She's like, you suck my dick, what? She's, like, just shooting random people like a gardener and shit. So everything's like, what the F? Chelios is still down. He's like, oh, my effing heart. I'm dying, nah. I'm effing dying. So he's going. He sees it. He sees the telephone pole. He's like, oh, I got an idea. Gonna climb this shit. Gonna do this now. Gonna touch this stuff and gets friggin' shot out of nowhere. Goes flying out of nowhere. So we're all like, what the F? The gay guy's just getting the crappy out of him because he's like, getting full body Tourette stuff and like he can't do anything. And he's like, and then all of a sudden, Chev Chelios comes out of nowhere. He's on fire, and he's like, hello! He's like beating the shit out of the guy. He's like, and he's like, oh, my face, nah! Throws him in the pool. Takes the guy's head, and he's like, you want water? I'll give you water, faggot! Boom, boots his head into a pool. So now he's on fire. He's killed everyone there, and he's like, yeah! Like he's on fire, and we're like, why are you celebrating? It's like, you're gonna die, you're molting. And he's like, and all of a sudden the Asian girl comes over, he goes, Chev, and he goes, give me a hug, bitch. And she's like, no, and he's hugging her, and she's on fire, she's turning on fire, she's like, whoa! Meanwhile, in Chev's mind, he's seeing him hooking up with his girlfriend, but meanwhile, he's really burning the stupid Asian wonton. So she's like, whoa! So here is the ending of the movie, and this is one of the worst endings I've ever seen to a movie. Chev Chelios burns a girl, looks outside into the friggin' outside world, comes back at the camera, he's on fire, and the music's like, and I won't stop loving you. He looks at the camera and goes, ah! And then it ends. What the hell just happened? I want to thank you guys for joining me in episode 2, and yes, this episode is still sponsored by